What's up, everyone? This is Medical Device Matt. Today's episode, I'm going to deep dive into the clinical specialist for the TAVR structural heart roles. This is sometimes called a field clinical specialist, Medtronic calls it a therapy development specialist. There's three main companies in the United States commercialized. That would be Medtronic, Abbott, and Edwards. This is an absolutely amazing role and one that I transitioned into later in my career, and I love it for several reasons. Before I deep dive into a typical day for this role, I want to talk about what attracted me to this division. There's a few things. One of the main things is you're scrubbing into the cases and you're making a huge impact on the patient and the physicians. It's the most hands-on role I have had. You're in the OR or the Cath lab. Like I said, you're scrubbing in and you're right next to the physician and planning team and the patient. So I really like that, but some people might not. Some people might not want to be so close to the action. And a lot of medical device roles are on a spectrum, right? I mean, some roles you're going to be in the OR Cath lab, and some you could be calling just on the clinics or not as patient involved, right? But for me, that's something I really wanted. The second thing that I really like about this division is that it's growing quickly, and that's the whole realm of structural heart. Structural heart is an innovative new field which has a lot of minimally invasive options to treat heart valve disease, the 4 different valves, but also other disease states such as PFOs or just holes in your heart or left atrial appendage closure. It's really exciting because it's fast growing. There's a lot of exciting technologies that are being brought to market now, and it's something that I like doing. So today we're going to talk about this role so I could give you a better sense if you're thinking about transitioning. Like I said, I love the time I had in this role. I love this field. You work with some of the top-notch physicians in interventional cardiology, and TAVR combines that with also the cardiothoracic surgeons. It's a really unique procedure because you're working in tandem. It's one of the first procedures I've ever did where you had a surgeon scrubbed in and an interventional cardiologist. All my 5 years before, it's just one physician, maybe an anesthesiologist as well in the room, but not two physicians working together procedurally. That's not the case with TAVR. So let's dive in. It's the morning, we're driving to the hospital, it's about 45 minutes. TAVR territories, and I think structural heart in general, you cover larger geographies because not every hospital is doing TAVR. For example, with pacing, if you have a Cath lab, you're probably doing pacemakers, and it's really every hospital. TAVR, it would be every 1 in 6, 1 in 10 hospitals. So you cover these larger geographies. Some of my teammates are even hopping on flights to cover out of state. We're driving to the hospital. We have a 7 o'clock procedure time. I'm trying to arrive at 6:15 so I can get the inventory ready, but also check the other Cath lab supplies by other manufacturers, and that could be the wires, catheters, balloons, because when my procedure goes, I want to make sure that all that equipment is identified and ready in case we need it, right? Sometimes in the morning you hop on calls, but right now I'm focused on the 2 cases that I have. I arrive to the hospital, inventory is located, and on my laptop or iPad, I'm going to pull up a CT analysis report. I'm going to talk about that at the end, but what it is a PDF that's personalized to the first patient to assess what heart valve is going in, assesses femoral axis, which is how we're going to get the heart valve to the heart, and then the chest measurements to measure and understand how the heart valve is going to interact and what size is appropriate. I have that pulled up because when the implanting physicians walk in, we're going to go talk to them and review the case. These patients have severe aortic stenosis. We're treating that, and that is a disease state. Over time, the leaflets become stenosed or calcified and they don't open up fully, so they need a new heart valve. Traditionally, these patients were sent for surgical aortic valve replacement, which has an amazing result, but requires an intensive recovery as the patients who go to surgery have a giant chest opening from the physician accessing their heart, going on bypass, removing that heart valve. With TAVR and a lot of the structural heart procedures, it's minimally invasive. A lot of these patients are going home the next day or the day after. All right, so back to the clinical specialist TAVR role. We're in the hospital. I have the report ready. The 2 physicians walked in. I review the first case with them just to refresh them. They've already reviewed this a few times and made a plan, but we're just all getting on the same page. And then I go to the Cath lab. Sometimes you're in the operating room. getting ready to go. Physicians come in, they scrub, they're in. They're working with a Cath lab and OR hybrid team, which is really unusual for medical device because usually the OR and the Cath lab are very separate. After 5 minutes, I go scrub in, meaning I go to the sink, I wash my hands with sterile scrub, I enter the operating suite, I put my gloves on, I gown, and I'm sterile. Because what I'm going to do at a certain point during the procedure, I'm going to ask for the heart valve and I'm going to load it onto the catheter so that it's ready to go when the physicians are ready. While I'm scrubbing and getting the valve ready, the physicians are getting access, placing a temporary pacemaker, and proceeding with a TAVR procedure. Eventually, they say, hey, Matt, you ready? Let's check the valve. We check the valve and we're ready to insert it into the patient. We proceed with the TAVR procedure. We drop the heart valve into the appropriate position, and we take out the delivery catheter and close up the hole we made into the artery. We have a great result, and we're done. What I really like about TAVR is that you see an immediate result. When you put in the aortic valve, the replacement, you see the stenosis go away, and we measure that with a gradient, which is a pressure difference. So after the valve is placed, we see the pressure difference go down towards single digits. Usually it's 40, 50, 60 with these patients in aortic stenosis. So we're done. I'm going to go to the lobby. I have a few things to do, and the turnover between the first patient and the second patient, where they clean the room and bring the next patient in, is about 30, 45, 60 minutes. So I have some time. And what I'm going to do during this time is go to the lobby, catch any of the physicians walking in, and have my laptop open for the second case. All right. Second case is ready. They call me. One of the nurses shoots me a text. I'm back in the operating suite. The doctors come in. I have the second report pulled up. This time is a different size valve, different anatomical measurements. So I let them know. And we do the same thing. They go into the suite, start preparing the surgery. I scrub in, I ask for the valve, I load it. During the procedure, they might ask me questions about my valve specifically, about Cath lab, about supplies in the room. Who knows? But I'm ready to answer any of those questions. We have a good result. We debrief after the case, talk to both physicians, make sure if there's any feedback or anything they need, and we're done. It's about 10:30, 11. I scheduled a lunch that I need to get to at 12. And on the way, I'm going to stop at a cardiology clinic and have lunch with the physician group. And I scheduled that the previous week. My goal of my lunch is to talk about, maybe recent clinical research, maybe a new product that a company is offering. And I'll go in and have lunch and educate on my product. After lunch, I'm going to head home. I have a few emails and CT reports that I need to generate. On my way home, there's a team call that I listen to in the car that is dissecting a recent journal article. And in this role, you have to stay on the forefront of the clinical research and academic data because this role is very hands-on and it's a very clinical sales role opposed to some of the other medical device roles there are, right? So I learned something new or a new take on the data. And finally, I'm home. What's nice is I know I'm going to be home for the rest of the day. Very rarely are there emergent procedures. So pacing or neurovascular, you get called and they're like, hey, you got to get to the hospital. There's a case right now. TAVR is not really like that. Very rarely you'll be called emergently. A lot of times there's an inpatient and they're going to push it for the next day. And that's really the quickest you need to be somewhere. So I'm home. I have some work to do. I'm not going to be called because I'm not on call anymore. And my goal is to finish a few CT reports that have been sent to me. And what that means is patients with aortic stenosis, before they receive the TAVR valve, like the patients this morning, have a workup they need to do. And in that physician workup, the physician has to do an angiogram, a CT TAVR, and lastly an echo, which is imaging of the heart. The CT report is like multi-X-ray, many different X-ray images piled together to make a special image that's sent to the radiology department or the field representatives from the different TAVR companies. And we have a special software that with those CT images, we can reconstruct the heart and begin our measurement process. And we call it a CT TAVR analysis. And what we're assessing is very specific measurements, such as where will the valve sit? How will the valve interact at the top of the frame? There's also the coronary arteries, which come off and supply blood to the heart. So we're understanding how the aortic valve will interact with the arteries, right? There's all these very specific measurements, and if you're interested, I would love to sit down with you and show you. But just for brief purposes, we measure the heart to understand what valve will go in, and we also measure from the femoral artery all the way to the aortic annulus to understand how the delivery catheter will interact as it navigates to the appropriate position. And we're looking at the sizing of the vessel, the calcium burden, and to make sure there's no damage or dissections to the arteries. Once the report is done, I email it to the appropriate hospital team. I have one more report, so I repeat that and send it out. That could take anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes. If it's something you haven't done a lot of, it's going to take a little bit longer until you learn the algorithm and rhythm. If you're a professional and it's a great scan, you could do them and turn around pretty quickly. So that ends my day. I did 2 TAVRs in the morning. I stopped by a clinic to educate on my product, and then I came home to wrap up some emails and CT reports. I love TAVR for several different reasons. First, it's very hands-on. You're looked upon as a trusted advisor, and the physicians ask a lot of questions. 2, from a business perspective, and a lot of people don't think about this, but it's a really fun space to be in because it's fast growing. Meaning the companies are putting a lot of resources into structural heart in general, be it research or a marketing budget or whatnot, because the division is growing so fast. And in a sense, it's fun to be on a rising tide. But there's also a lot of expectations to perform in such a star division, right? I really like this division. I hope this video helped educate on the TAVR roles. If you're interested, reach out. I think it's one of the best divisions. I think structural heart in general is a great area to be. So reach out if you're interested. Also reach out if you want to highlight your day in the life and the role you do. Thank you.